Now, the EU and Canada have hit back to U.S. tariffs on imports of steel and aluminium. The bloc imposing counter tariffs on nearly $28 billion of American products, which will take effect next month. EU officials are, however, keeping the door open for dialogue. Now, the move from the United States is expected to hit Canada the hardest, as it is the largest supplier of steel and aluminium to the U.S. Ottawa has just announced it is also hitting back with tariffs. And to talk more about this story, we can bring in Moshe Lander, Senior Lecturer of Economics at Concordia University. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today. Now, the business community expects a certain level of clarity, certainty. However, with Donald Trump, one day we have tariffs that are announced, then they're paused, then they're hiked, then there's so much uncertainty going on. What will this haphazardness do to the global economy?
Well, we've already seen the results. It's destabilizing it. You're right. It's impossible to make decisions if you don't know what's going to happen later today, let alone tomorrow, let alone next year. And so businesses are really starting to reconsider projects that need to run for decades because they don't know if tomorrow the economic environment is going to change in a way that makes what's profitable today unprofitable tomorrow.
Now, Canada has chosen to respond to these tariffs from the United States. This despite that very close trading relationship between the two neighbors. How interconnected are these countries really?
We each export from each other about $500 billion. So from the Canadian economy, which is around $2 trillion, that's about 25% of our economy. And the U.S., of course, is much, much more substantial. But even if the numbers don't make it look very significant, it's the interconnectedness of our industries. Our auto industry exists on both sides of the Canadian-U.S. border, and car parts will pass maybe 7 to 10 times in completing a final car. If you now have tariffs on steel and aluminum, it makes it impossible to run an efficient, lean manufacturing base. And so it really will destabilize both economies. And when Trump's promising that it's going to have no effect on U.S. consumers, even there, like you were saying earlier, he keeps flip-flopping. He was saying that maybe we'll have a recession, maybe it's not, stock market will go down, maybe the stock market will go up. I can tell you as an economist that whatever he's saying that makes it sound good, he's wrong.
Mexico has chosen a different path. It's not hit back with tariffs of its own. Its leader has chosen a different path, something the United Kingdom seems to be doing as well. Do you think that strategy could potentially appeal to Donald Trump?
Well, I think it's appealing to his narcissism. So whatever is going to make him feel like he's gotten his way. And I think that a big mistake that Canada made in the last couple of days was when Trump backed off the recent round of tariff threats. The premier of Ontario, our biggest province, decided to slap the U.S. with a 25% tariff on electricity exports. That probably enraged him, which is what we see now this morning with a changing U.S. policy. Mexico has maybe decided to lay low a little bit. They do have a problem with migrants crossing the southern border into the U.S., and so maybe addressing that is what's giving them a little bit of space. Canada's problems are different from Trump's viewpoint, and so I guess the response that's needed is going to be different as well.
Moshe, I realize that you are based in Canada. Can you, as a Canadian consumer, can you tell us, are you really seeing these concerted efforts from things like supermarkets to buy local, buy Canadian?
You're exactly right. That's a big movement that's going on right now. Canadians are usually very quiet about their patriotism. It surfaces maybe in hockey games. It surfaces when we travel the world wearing a Canadian backpack or with a flag on our backpack. But these days, Canadians are very, very outward, showing their emotions and their pride. One of the things that's happening is that anything that is from the U.S., we're trying to boycott. Grocery stores have even gone so far as to place a T on products that are coming from the U.S. that would be subject to a tariff, almost encouraging consumers to just not buy it and leave it sticking on the shelf.
Could these moves from the White House, this haphazardness we're seeing from Donald Trump, end up hurting American companies? As you said, in Canada, we have people turning their backs away from American products, but also American services, things like Uber.
Yeah. 27 U.S. states list Canada as their biggest export market. And so where the U.S. as a whole might have major trade relationships with much larger economies than Canada, the fact is that there's a lot of U.S. House representatives, senators, and governors that recognize that picking a fight with Canada is not a smart move for their local industry and business. It's not going to be the type of thing that brings the U.S. to its knees, but it is going to make it much more difficult for them to operate in Canada going forward, given that a trade relationship relationship that's existed for 80 years, we were two of the original co-signers of the GATT, is now compromised because we don't know if we can trust them again. And that's going to be really hard. Trust is something you build over a lifetime and you lose in 5 minutes.
Moshe, how do you see this all ending, panning out? Is everything going to fall into place magically? Is there a method to the madness or none at all?
There's no method to the madness unless the purpose is the madness. We convinced ourselves in 2016 that we just have to get through 4 years and then this would go away and things would return to normal. I think we're kind of convincing ourselves that we just have to get through another 4 years and then things will return to normal. I'm not entirely sure that's true. Once you see that this is the type of thing that you can do and you can rip up agreements, at some later point, will there be another Republican president or will there even be a Democrat president that comes along and says, I don't agree with Canada on its environmental stance, so I'm going to compromise the free trade agreement to get what we want out of Canada. I don't know that things necessarily go back to normal in the medium to long term.
Yeah, considering that Donald Trump is the one who went and renegotiated NAFTA and then tore it up again. Moshe Lander, we're going to have to leave it there. Thank you so much for joining us on the program today.
Anytime.